Welcome back to your Thursday Loose Women alongside me, Kay Adams. It's Denise Welsh, Gloria Hunniford and Carol McGiffin. And we've got Kate Thornton joining us later in the show. But first, we are now heading over to ITV News for an update on events in Ukraine today. Just a warning that there is likely to be flashing images of explosions.
Good afternoon. Boris Johnson has addressed the nation after Russia invaded Ukraine in the early hours. The explosions began before dawn in several cities across the country. 40 people are now believed to have been killed in the conflict. Back here, the Prime Minister said diplomatically, politically, economically and eventually militarily, this hideous and barbaric venture of Vladimir Putin must end in failure.
If the months ahead are grim and the flame of freedom burns low, I know that it will blaze bright again in Ukraine. Because for all his bombs and tanks and missiles, I don't believe that the Russian dictator will ever subdue the national feeling of the Ukrainians and their passionate belief that their country should be free. Ukraine is a country that for decades has enjoyed freedom and democracy and the right to choose its own destiny. We and the world cannot allow that freedom just to be snuffed out. We cannot and will not just look away.
His words came after the head of NATO said Russia had shattered peace in Europe and shut the door to a political solution.
We now have war in Europe on a scale and of a type we thought belonged to history. This is a deliberate, cold-blooded and long-planned invasion.
NATO chiefs have said 100 jets are ready to protect its airspace. They've also announced plans to send more military support to the region. That follows the start of shelling of Kiev and other major cities, which began early this morning. Explosions were reported in the capital, Kharkiv, Dnipro and Mariupol. Well, this is the scene. Let's take you to the Ukrainian capital right now, where the eyes of the world are waiting and watching to see what might happen next. Our Europe editor, James Mates, is in Kiev. What are we hearing from where you are, James?
Well, reports from all over the battlefield. The ones from here that we're reasonably confident about is that there has been a helicopter-led assault by Russian troops on an airbase about 40 kilometres away from the capital called Hostomel, which some reports are saying they have managed to capture. Now, this would be in keeping with what the intelligence suggested was going to be Russian strategy to try and move quickly on the capital here and decapitate the regime. Beyond that, we know that there's heavy fighting up at Kharkiv in the northeast of the country, and down in the southeast, the port city of Mariupol, fighting there, which Ukrainians say they are resisting successfully. But I must emphasise the fog of war is near total here. Getting hold of reliable information at this early stage is very, very difficult. We're just getting the odd report and pictures. In the meantime, after all those words from European leaders that we've been hearing this morning, the Ukrainians are now really asking, come on, what are you going to do? What are these sanctions?
We wait to see James Mates. Thank you very much for now. Our deputy political editor, Anushka Asthana, is at Downing Street. Boris Johnson says President Putin must fail. What's your analysis of what he had to say?
Well, I want to pick up on one thing he said, which was that his mission was clear: diplomatically, politically, economically and eventually militarily. Putin must fail. Now, we have sent anti-tank missiles, but there are no discussions about troops going on the ground. So really, we're at the third level of that, hitting Russia economically. So the question is, how much do sanctions hurt? There were plenty put in place in 2014, and they did hit Russian GDP, but only by 0.2% per year. That said, Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, says this will be an unprecedented package. The Prime Minister also spoke about Ukrainians here in the UK, and there are plenty at the gates of Downing Street right now. They're chanting "Block Putin's money" and protection from the UK. And aside from what's happening on the ground, there is another impact as well. We have a situation where the oil price is the highest it has been in 8 years, and a warning this morning that petrol prices could hit £1.60 per litre.
Anoushka, thank you very much for that update. We will, of course, have a full roundup of the situation in Ukraine and reaction from around the world at 1:30. And Julie Etchingham will be here with a special programme tonight, War in Europe at 7:30. For now, bye-bye.
And of course, there will be more updates on the situation in Ukraine straight after our show on the 1:30 lunchtime news. Now, our next guest is a familiar